Welcome, welcome. Today is episode 2 of Gifts and Grace. Thank you for joining us. And if you're watching this on a replay, thank you for watching. Again, the reason that I, Kim Madsen at Kim Madsen Consulting, have done this is just because I know this is a hectic time of year. And I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to utilize these episodes as a way to find joy and help yourself and help others as we move through the next few weeks. They're meant to be happy times, and sometimes so they can be stressful. So that is what this episode and this series is all about. It's about helping you find greater joy. And so we are going to hop right into the webinar portion for today. And the webinar portion today is about, is happiness really a choice? And so I'm going to switch right over here and share my screen. Start. Feel free at any time to put, if you have a comment, over in the chat section. I am going to make myself disappear here. Or not. So we are going to get started. And really, is happiness really a choice? And I think that everyone, we hear over and over that happiness is a choice, and all we have to do is wake up in the morning and just make a decision. Just make a decision that we're going to be happy. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. Is that really the case? And so we're going to move right on through. First, though, I want to share with you a little bit about me. I'm Kim Madsen. I own Kim Madsen Consulting. I am a wife. I am a mom. I'm a daughter, a sister, a friend, a faithful servant, and an entrepreneur. And in these pictures represents me and my husband from a long time ago on a very happy day. And then also my 3 boys are on the right, and then our family picture on the bottom. And you'll hear more about them as we go through this little webinar. I've spent the last 22 years before I started my own company, Kim Madsen Consulting, actually working in both nonprofit and for-profit world. I've had leadership positions, been on executive leadership teams. I have been pretty much in every position you can think of. I have had really awesome managers and leaders, and I've had really bad managers and leaders, and both of those impact our happiness. And we also will cover some more information about those. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on me and the information that I'm going to share. So my guarantee for you today is that somewhere in this presentation, in this webinar, you will see yourself or you will see someone you know, and you'll walk away with some helpful information on different things that you can do a bit more happy in your day. My one ask, and this is the only thing I'm going to ask of you today, is that after this webinar, if you would follow me on Facebook at Kim Madsen Consulting, if you would follow Cultivate Her MN, that is a women's event that I do in the spring, and tickets go on sale soon. So if you follow that page, there's a lot of great information there about our speakers that are coming and the people who are participating. You can follow me on Instagram at Kim Madsen Consulting, LinkedIn, I'm Kim Madsen / Masters of Ed. And then I also have a YouTube channel. I will be posting recorded webinar. And then my email, of course, you can reach me at any time. So if you could do those things, that's my one ask of today. So let's get started. First of all, I want to ask you, when we're looking at these pictures, this is always a good tester that I want to do, and I do at every beginning of every training. I do a little check-in. Now, if you'll kind of think about and look at these little baby faces, how are you feeling at the moment? You know, are you like, oh my gosh, is she crazy? I'm having a rough day, happy, or I'm a little hesitant. Doing that check-in with yourself when you're going into a meeting, when you're going to work, when you're returning home, it's a really important part. It's a part of understanding how your actions are going to come off, how your words are going to land. All really start with our first, how we're feeling. So there's just a little check-in for you. So if you can kind of think about that. Wishing, and this is a question I ask because don't we all just wish we could wake up every day happy? If it were just as easy as a wish, I think that our world, we see a lot more faces and everything would just be happy all the time. But in reality, that's just not the way it is. But our main question today is happiness really a choice? Is it a you choose left or you choose right, you choose to be happy or you choose not to be happy? We're going to talk a little bit more about that because in reality, I don't think it is. Research will show, and we're going to cover 3 different topics today on the 3 things that really impact happiness that you can start today. Because the idea of getting to a place of happiness each day exhausts you. You know, when people say you over and over, all you gotta do is smile. All you need to do is this. If you did this, if you did this, if you read this book, if you did this action, if you did this, all these suggestions coming at us, right and left. And so when we don't feel happiness every day, sometimes it puts people in a position of feeling like this. Stuck, don't want to get out of bed. It is really a quiet desperation. And so it might not be you. It might be somebody you know. It might be a time in your life where it's that quiet desperation, a feeling of overwhelm. And so this is how we do not want. So we're going to take and look at why, because we're going to look at Western culture. Western culture and our values reduced, exhaustion, disappointment, unhappiness. But part of it is because we're always chasing. You know, just I was saying is people are always about, here's this idea, if you just did this. We always think we know what's best for everybody else. But our culture also is about the value of self over others. It's seeking validation, social media, under not thinking about how our words are landing with the people that we love and care about and the people who are just in our circle or outer circle or happen to be in their presence. Stopping to think about how our words are landing. And we are very judgment-based as curiosity and wonder. So we generally go through life, in the first instance somebody speaks, our brain automatically goes and our ego take us to think about that in a judgment versus curiosity and wonder why that person would be saying those things. And understanding that my opinion and your opinion, or the way I see the world, is through blue glasses and you see it through pink glasses. We are very different and unique individuals. But because we're always looking at ourselves and how to improve us, we think that the things that we learn are the right and accurate. But our perceptions and the way that we understand things is so different. And again, for anybody who's joining us, if you want to have any comments, you can always join here in the group chat, and I'm more than happy to answer questions as we go. So we're going to shake off that Western theory, that Western mentality, and we're going to go to happiness in a different approach. We're going to look at it in the realm of, if it's not a choice, what are the things and actions we can be doing a little bit differently? And so here we go. Because what if happiness and the thought of happiness and getting to a place of happiness actually looked like this little girl? Because isn't she super cute and sweet? And it's the excitement, the joy, and that is what we all crave. We just crave to have a smile on our face. And some days it's just not as easy as we would want it to be. So where do we start? There's actually 3 different topics, and of course I chose donuts because, I don't know, I think donuts make a lot of people happy. And so with the cute little sprinkles, and so we're going to have 3 different things that we're going to talk about represented by these 3 donuts. And so here we go. The first is our relationships. You know, we think of, if you think about your relationships from the time when you were a little kid, you know, our part of our childhood, we are with friends. We're at friends at school, we're friends on the playground, we have play dates. It wasn't that way when I was young, of course. We were just out running around our small little town on our bikes, and it was a lot of freedom to be with our friends. And so, but if we think about that at each stage of life, about as we go, we're through high school, hanging out with friends, we go to college, hanging out with friends, and then we move to the middle part of our life, and our time with our friends becomes less. Unless you do have strong friendships at work, and which is highly encouraged when we talk about happiness. But if you think about your friend groups and the people who you consider friends, and then you move from your middle years to your later years, Research will show that having 4 close friends helps you ward off heart disease. That's why relationships, when we're not only talking about heart disease, we are talking about happiness. We are talking about what relationships can bring for us. It is about personal growth, professional growth. We become better due to our relationships. And so let's take a little closer look. Because we are all longing to be understood. We want to feel safety and we don't want to feel judged. So Harwell Hendricks, he's a PhD in marriage counseling. He said, are your words landing as a negative? It's not what you say, but how you say it. And I think that this is just a common occurrence where we kind of just bulldoze through life and our words come out of our mouth and we aren't intentional with them on one end. And on the other side, when somebody is speaking to us, our mind is already racing to solve the problem, make a recommendation, give our 2 cents. We feel uncomfortable with silence, so we rush to just speak. When in reality, if we were more intentional about how we receive, and that if we could be that safe place of no judgment, our relationships would be stronger. So on the speaking side, if we could speak in a way that our words land softly with no judgment, and on the other side of receiving. Because the myth is that we all need to be well-rounded, that in our friendships, our marriages, our work relationships, every relationship you have, that we need to be well-rounded. We need to be the everything to everyone. And the sooner that we get over that thought and realize, if you think about your circle of your closest friends, do your circle of closest friends, are they well-rounded? Do they bring you everything? We tend to focus on what people don't bring to us. So if you think about in a marriage that might be not the greatest, and I'm probably just as guilty of this, I would say that most married people are, is that we tend to focus on the of where our spouse isn't that to us, doesn't bring it to the relationship. And I think that we go through thinking that our husbands and our wives need to be the everything, they need to be well-rounded. And in actuality, if we focus on what our spouse brings, what they're awesome at, where we're strong, and we continue to work on that part of the relationship, it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. It's the same thing with our friends. Our friends aren't meant to be well-rounded. Everybody brings a different item to you, and we're going to talk about what those are. So there's 8 vital roles in your friendships, and you can look at this in your marriage as well, or partnership, or whatever it might be. And there's 8 vital roles. And so when you think about this, start to think about your friends in these capacities. Who is your builder? Who are the friends that help build you up? Who are looking to help you become what you want to become? You definitely have them. You have your champion, the person who's always on your side, always has your back. You have a collaborator. Who is the person that you share all your ideas with, who loves to share ideas? Not everybody does. Not everybody has ideation and futuristic strengths. Then you have your companion. Who is that person that you just love to be next to do things with? Sometimes we have a friend who just is a great companion. They probably aren't our builder. They might not be our collaborator, but what they bring is companionship. Then you have your connector. Who is that friend who just loves to connect you to other people? Who connects you to things that they think would be important for you, the things that they see. And then you have your energizer, that person when you're with, all you can do is smile and laugh, and they just fill you up. They fill your cup up. Then you have your mind opener, that one person, or people, doesn't have to just be one, who actually sees things differently, who brings a new perspective to you and makes you think outside the box, outside of your normal constraints, because we tend to live in our comfort zone. So who is your mind opener? And then you have your navigator, that person who helps you just through everything and anything. They're always there to make sure and help you navigate and guide and hopefully make the right choices for you, because we know that sometimes we make bad choices, sometimes we make good choices, But in reality, it all comes down to it's a choice, and there'll be another one straight ahead. So if you sit and think about your circle, and it's easiest to start with the people close to you, to think about what role do they play. And so when I think of my friend Marnie, and I sent her a message about this, is that she's a builder. She is my champion. She is a great collaborator. She fills many of these roles for me. That's what she brings to our friendship. And so one day I sent her a text and I just said, I need you to know I'm so thankful for you because you are this to me. You are a builder. You are my champion. You are a collaborator. And you bring all of these things to our friendship. Because when I ask you, what role do each of your friends play? Each of your family members play? Only 30% of people would be able to tell me in an instant what role people are playing. Now, the reason it's important is because when you think about your happiness, the sooner we stop thinking that everybody needs to be well-rounded and bring everything, the happier you are going to be. And if you think about just picking one friend a day for the next week and to say, oh, this is the role they play for me, or the multiple roles they play for me in our friendship, and shoot them a text or an email or a phone call and just say, you know what, in this time of Thanksgiving and Christmas, I just need you to know this is a vital role you play in my life. This is a vital role you play in our friendship. Now, if you think about that, if somebody were to send you that text and tell you the vital role that you play to them, what does that do automatically? It automatically puts a smile on your face, and that's what you're going to do for them. So when we think about happiness, happiness for me is when part of it is we receive it when somebody tells us how important we are to them, but it's also a matter of I find happiness when I tell my friends and my family how important they are to me, whether that's text or etc. For me, also happiness comes at Christmas because I'm one of those people that gift giving is more fulfilling and happiness to me. So seeing the look on their face, starting to think in those roles of when you give, what makes you happy, but also then thinking of your relationships because they're critical. Relationships are a critical piece to your happiness. As we grow older, we tend to become more solitude because at the end of a busy day, what do we like to do? A lot of people it is, I just need to go home. I want to take off my work clothes and put on my comfy clothes. I need to make dinner, get my kids to where they need to be, etc., etc., etc. And I can tell you that I am just as guilty of my friends being and putting it off and putting it off. How many of you do that? I'm guessing quite a few, actually, because we tend to put off our relationships. And I would say start making those a priority. The next donut is about, are you on the right seat on the bus? So we start with relationships. That's donut number 1. Key, vital relationships. And next we move on to the second donut of, are you in the right seat on the bus? We spend such a huge portion of our time from the time we are 16 to we are 65, the majority of our life in a role, in a company, or in a job, right? So what about if we stop and actually think about, am I in the right seat? Is this where I'm meant to be? And so many people I know talk to me and say, how do I know I'm in the right spot? So when I coach them or they go through my programs and they learn about their strengths, it is about, are you using your gifts and talents? Every day when you wake up, are you happy going to the job you're in? If not, let's figure it out. Let's figure it out. Let's use those strengths and figure out where we belong, right? Because strengths, I mean, if you've worked with me in the past or if you haven't, StrengthsFinder, it's a Clifton Strengths 2.0. It is different than, it's not a personality test. It shows you there's 34 strengths. You have all 34, but it's going to show you your top 5 if you do that assessment. When you start to look at those top 5 strengths, for instance, mine are maximizer, achiever, activator, relator, and strategic. If I had known that 20 years ago, my work relationships would have been totally different. I could have taken out some conflict. Things really would have been different. But doing the assessment alone doesn't get us there. We need to take a step further and actually take and become intentional with those strengths. Strengths is meant for kids age 9 and all the way up through adulthood. My children are 11, 15, and 18, and my 11-year-old took this 2 years ago, and it's called Junior Strengths Explorer. And it has been a world changer for us in dealing with teachers and understanding that his top 3 are competition, achiever, and discoverer, which means that he asks a lot of questions. He's highly competitive with those in his classroom, and he likes to be successful. And other kids have other strengths, but then for a teacher to be able to understand that is really important. So strengths, knowing if you're right seat on the bus, critical to happiness, because you know what? That time that we spend in our jobs, in our role, if we aren't in the right seat, we don't get this time back. Our childhood is awesome. We go through it. Not every child is awesome, but for those, you work till you're 16 with no job, 16 you get a job, you work till you're 65, and then every day in between, we don't want to be waiting till it's Friday. We don't want to be living for and waiting for retirement to be happy, right? These are critical years of where when you learn and hone and are intentional with your strengths and your words, that your relationships be stronger. They go hand in hand. Donut 1, relationships. Donut 2, strengths. Critical to happiness. And so time, and I just love this picture because it is one of those things. This half hour that you're spending with me talking about happiness and how do I get there and how do we make it more consistent, how do we help others be happier, you don't get it back. So I really hope you take something away. Every time you make a choice to do something, remember you don't get that time back. And so it is massively important that you spend time with the people who are vital to you, that your relationships are vital, that you know your strengths and you can be intentional. That is critical piece to your happiness. And here, this comes from Helen Lakely Hunt. She's a PhD in marriage psychology as well. Being able to talk to another human being without pissing them off, connecting so that you feel safe with that person and they feel safe with you. That's the desire of the human heart. Is that not accurate? It's absolutely true. The idea, and we get so stuck in this of thinking our friends need to be well-rounded and our husbands need to be well-rounded, our wives need to be well-rounded. They don't. But what we do need to have is a common acknowledgement and language that when we speak to one another, that we're able to speak safely and feel safe with who we're speaking to. And that is our desire. We don't want to walk around worrying about what we say is going to make the other person upset or mad, right? So common, if we come from a place of saying this is safe, you can say and tell me whatever is on your heart, that is what builds happiness. That's what builds those strong relationships, and that's how we move forward. When we know our strengths, so we have relationships donut 1, strengths number 2, it is really important to understand where your gifts and your talents are. Because through those gifts and talents, you are going to understand what you love, what brings you energy, what type of work brings you energy, what relationships bring you energy, who you need that is opposing to you to be a strong team. And when you understand what you love, you're also going to understand what you don't love about somebody else's strengths, right? But when I understand your strengths, then I'm much more able to come at it from a perspective of, ooh, I get this about you now. Because it's all in the unknown is where conflict lies. And conflict is not happiness. I do not know one person who thrives in conflict. So when we're talking about happiness, getting rid of conflict or reducing it to a level that's acceptable for you is going to be key. Because when we understand that strength that are on the top, we know what we love, We also understand the challenge, because when we aren't intentional with our strengths, and I will just say with strategic being my number 5, this is just an example, that a problem comes, I have option 1, 2, 3, and here's our decision. Like 30 seconds later is how my brain is wired. And if I'm in a room with people who are restorative, context, analytical, other strengths, I need to be aware, I need to be intentional with my strategic, and I need to actually zip my mouth. And I need to sit back and I need to listen and understand that some of them, their best answer is going to come tomorrow. It's not going to come today. So when that is a challenge for me, right? So in a team, if I can express, here are the things, I'm very fast paced. My challenge comes in the fact that sometimes I'm too fast paced and I'm not paying attention to the people around me. What I need from you, and this is the third step, this is where I can tell a team or people I'm working with, when I'm moving too quickly, I need you to say, hey, hang on a second. Why don't we revisit this tomorrow so everybody can come back with their best idea? Because in all reality, we aren't perfect. And being intentional with our strengths isn't something that we can do 100% of the time. Next, we're going to move on to boundaries. So we have relationships, we have strengths, and are you on the right seat on the bus? The other thing for happiness. How many of you feel like you're on overload? Overload is the killer of happiness. And even for me as an achiever, that my plate is usually full. And having a full plate means that brings me energy. That is not the same for everybody. But when we're talking about the buckets, it's about whether you are saying yes and no, or saying yes too often. Are you saying yes to the right things? And so when we come to the buckets, I want you to think of this in terms of your values. So how to say yes and when to say no. If your value, I'm just going to give this an example. So the value buckets are my faith, my family, my work, and I'm going to give me a bucket, right? Because you all need a bucket. And if you don't have yourself having a bucket, you need to get yourself having one. So when we talk about this, when I'm saying yes all the time to work, and I've coached people through this as well who've said, I have been putting 110% into my work, right? What happens when we put 110% into work for a really long time, not just in a day, but over time consistently, our other buckets start to drain low. Eventually they become empty. I cannot tell you how many people I have coached who, when we go through the value buckets and what we're saying yes to and what we're saying no to, this is a time where I see many tears. And it's not tears of happiness. It is tears of regret, sadness, feeling like they aren't fulfilling, because we really feel that, especially women, feel they're super women and they need to be able to do it all. Say yes when nobody's saying yes because nobody else is going to do it. The reality is somebody will step up. If you're saying yes, it needs to be an answer that's going to fill one of your value buckets. If it isn't going to fill your value buckets, then it needs to be a no. And the nice way to do this is when somebody asks you if you want to do something, you need to say, can I take 24 hours to think about it? Not immediate yes, not an immediate no. 24 hours and I'll let you know. And if you come back and the answer is no, you can say, for right now, I have to say no because I have other things that I need to say yes to. Nobody is ever going to fault you for that. It all comes down to sometimes we say yes to things and then we can't fulfill them to the level that we want, and then we feel worse yet. So don't say yes out of guilt, but make sure it is filling one of your value buckets. And when you can start to do that, you will start to see that you are setting yourself up for success. The happiness. Happiness comes from doing the things that you enjoy and that fit into your strengths, and fill those value buckets. Because it comes down to boundaries. And so when we're talking about boundaries, this comes in work boundaries, personal boundaries, friendship boundaries. What are you setting? I work with so many leaders who are put into leadership positions who talk about, I've been put into this leadership role, and they're very heavy in either relationship strengths or executing, influencing, or strategic. It doesn't really matter. But without the proper training on moving into leadership, all they know is the leadership and management they've had before. And leadership and management are not the same thing. And so as a leader, happiness can come to you and to your team if you understand your boundaries. And if through your boundaries, you are about coaching and you are about helping them grow and you are about empowering. Setting boundaries for what you will and you will not do for them is an empowerment tool. Because if one of your employees is coming to you and they're asking you the same question over and over and you continually do it, that means your ego is taking over and you're falling back into what's your comfort and you can do it really well. So instead of coaching, you're doing. Doing for your staff is not leadership, it is management. I hope that little difference, you can see that and understand it. So it's way more important to step into a leadership position. The people that I coach and go through my programs absolutely are on the right track of how to utilize their strengths to do that. Because we are all creatures of habit, and they're usually the bad ones. And so thinking about that, if you think about what are the things that you continually do over and over that you want to switch, and you can take this from the, am I saying yes? Does it fill my value buckets? You can think of it in the terms of your time. So when I will say, Netflix is a bad habit of mine. I love it, but it can suck me in. And so when I'm spending my time, I really need the time idea for me really sets it apart. And so when I think about, okay, how much time am I willing to give to watch the show? Now, if it's something that my husband and I are watching, that is filling up my marriage bucket, right? We're together, we're watching the same show. Some people can disagree, but I believe that that definitely is time together. And so it's just about the value buckets and is it a good use of your time? For those bad habits, how do we start to diminish them, right? So we create a stop doing list because we know when we write something down, then it becomes concrete. So writing a stop doing list and a start doing list definitely can help you. And keeping track of those bad habits and the good habits, how are you implementing them and starting to roll with them? And how successful? Because it does have to become a consistency. Who's keeping you accountable, right? Can you keep yourself accountable, or do you need somebody to work alongside you? Never hurts to have a coach. This is the one thing that we talk about all the time, whether I'm doing a leadership training or I'm doing in coaching or one of my classes. Change is growth. My job is always to come in and really being uncomfortable and seeking change, because that's a growth opportunity. If you're not helping your friends see that, if you're not helping your coworkers see that, when I ask people, how often do you seek feedback? I get about, I would say 70% saying never, 30% saying they like it. And so it really comes down to seeking feedback. And if you don't like the term feedback because it has a negative connotation, you can think of it as a growth opportunity conversation. This is what I encourage every leader, every manager to do, is to take it away from being a feedback conversation to an opportunity conversation. And it's about seeking input versus telling. When we go to one of our staff and say, here's an area, let's talk about it. What's your suggestion on how to improve? Having them come up with a solution and the solution mindset is always going to be much more successful than you coming in with a directive. That leadership is about seeking solutions, not giving directives. So change, looking for change. I hope that everyone is seeking that out because change is uncomfortable. However, it is the greatest opportunity. And when you see that growth in yourself, happiness occurs. We are creatures who need change, and we need that growth. Because the last thing we want to do is get to the age of 65, 70, 75 and say, would've, should've, could've. But I didn't. Now, some of us are apt for change, taking on risk, and some aren't, and that's absolutely fine. But in order to figure out if you're on how your relationships are going, I wish I could have told that person that. I wish I would have made that phone call, but I didn't. Time is continually going. So instead of saying didn't, let's say did. And whatever that is for you, make sure that it's the value buckets, it's relationships, and you're on the right seat on the bus. So whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And when it comes to happiness, it's about taking action. It truly is. You think about the things that fill up your cup, they probably will fill up somebody else's cup. So instead of staying in the mode of not doing or saying I'll do it tomorrow, set yourself on your calendar 5 minutes a day to make a difference. Because when you make a difference in your relationships, in turn, you are going to grow. We all are caught up, like you said, in Western society. We are reading self-help books. We are listening to podcasts. You're all on this webinar. You're watching the recording of this webinar. But when we stop, and I'm on a 60-day hiatus from reading any books, it's a challenge my friends gave me because I'm always reading books, which reading is awesome, don't get me wrong. However, it is in this time, research has proven, and I just want to reiterate this point. Read for yourself to fill your bucket, but make sure the time dedicated to it is not taken away from time that you can be strengthening and building your relationships. When we strengthen and build our relationships personally and professionally, it will come back 100 times more than reading a book to do self-help improvement. The people around us who create and live those vital roles for us, they build us up and make us better. They bring happiness to our life. It's just a critical piece. It's a critical research-driven piece that relationships are key. Now, accountability. Accountability is that we can all watch things, we read things, and then we don't take action. So I want you to find a person who can keep you accountable. Give yourselves a challenge. How are you going to take a piece of this today, one of those donuts, the relationship donut, the right seat on the bus donut, or the value bucket donut? And what is a challenge you want to give yourself? And maybe it's just for a week. Maybe it's just for 2 weeks. Maybe it's just during this time of Christmas. What is that challenge you can give to yourself to bring your happiness up a notch? Because that is what we're looking for. And once you start and that habit is going to take place and you keep that accountability going, you will see your happiness continually grow. So if you want more information, today we have talked about, like I said, those 3 donuts. If you keep the 3 donuts in your head, if you keep in your mind the value buckets, if you keep in your mind the relationship, picture your family, picture of your friends, and if you'll keep in mind the time clock, the dripping sand, because our time we don't get back. It is critical to keep this in mind. And so I'm here. I'm Kim at K. Madsen Consulting. If you ever want to talk, I am here. I wish you happiness in this season, and I hope that you have enjoyed episode 2 of Grace and Giving. Again, my request is just that you follow on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all of those items. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day.